Hello, Warren. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you here. I always ask this question to get started. How did you get mixed up with the Gutter Monkeys?
Well, we were all in jail, and no, that's a different story for a different day. Well, I've had an advertising agency since 1982. I started in Worcester. Grew the company over the years. At one point, we had about 18 people working with us all over New England. We handled advertising all over New England. Then about 2008, we moved, bought a house on the Cape and decided to start finding some business down here. And I was lucky enough to meet our senior account executive, Laurie O'Terry. Was working for Cape Cod Broadcasting down here, and she was calling on us. And I used to say to her, I always thought she was good from the moment we met. And I said, if you ever want to take a trip over to the dark side and you want to come to work for us, let me know. And about a year and a half, 2 years later, she finally said to me, do you still want me? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And Laurie's been one of the best additions we've had at Palley Advertising in many years. And she's really grown the Cape business. And she went over and brought a sheet cake on the first anniversary of the Gutter Monkeys to Dennis's house.
It was actually my house at the time. Right, the office was still at home. Yeah,
wow.
I mean it's it's the personal touch that still works, and a lot of people don't do it anymore, but it still does work, and it got Dennis's attention.
It sure did. Yeah.
Next thing I know, we're working with the Gutter Monkeys and their franchisees on all their radio.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, so it started with a sheet cake. Pretty impressive.
It started with the sheet cake.
It's been 10 years now? 10 years of advertising?
11. Actually, we're halfway through our 11th year.
Wow.
But the truth of the matter is, at the time, I think the Cape Cod Gutter Monkeys, were one location at the time. We were on 4 radio stations, all the 4 iHearts.
Yeah.
And when that is the case, there's a half a dozen other radio stations on the Cape. They start calling you up because they want to get you to advertise on their radio station.
Right.
And I was hearing from this one and that one, and we really were happy with what we had. If Laurie, who was working for CCB Media at the time, and they own and operate 4 stations,
right.
If she had sent me an email, picked up the phone and called, I probably would have clicked through or delete, but we came back to the shop, which at the time was the garage next to my house. And my wife was the office manager at the time, which we were running out of one of the extra bedrooms in the house. And she said, a pretty young girl came by and dropped off a big sheet cake for us. And I think we probably had 5 of us, Andy, me, and 3 people in the field and Barbara in the office. And it was a congratulations, your 1-year anniversary cake. And that got my attention, and I called her back. What a great old school move.
Yeah. And a day age of cell phones and emails and texting people back and forth. It's that little personal touch that kind of turned the
something
tide.
as simple as a handwritten note. Yeah. Thank you for your time. It was great to meet you. When was the last time you received a handwritten note, thank you note in the mail?
Yeah.
It's going to get your attention because you just don't see them anymore.
Yeah.
And by the way, as we move forward with this podcast today, remember that a sheet cake, which has been around since, for hundreds of years, that was the contact, the sheet cake. And we're kind of going to bounce around and talk about some marketing strategies, I think, today. I don't know, Chris, but we don't really script it too much here. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Just the oldest fashion type of a thing.
Yeah, we keep saying this over and over again. We keep talking about innovation, how innovative this company is and how innovative the people we work with are. But a lot of times it's these old school things that are now, or they're where the real innovation is, the actual writing a card and saying thank you.
Well, what I learned too, what I learned, Chris, from Laurie and coming down to the Cape in general, the Cape is a different world into itself when it comes to marketing down here than it does. And I'm not, what am I, an hour and a half away from Worcester, where our office is? Totally different. When I came down here and saw that the Gutter Monkeys were running 60-second commercials, I hadn't done a 60-second commercial off Cape in 15, 20 years
Yeah.
because we had gotten
Incredible.
away with it. And we were doing 30s, we were doing 10s
Wow, I know.
and 15s, but no 60s. And I said, what's going on here? I don't understand. People were still advertising in the newspaper
Yeah.
at the time and so forth, because it's different. And not to correct you, but there's probably closer to 14 radio stations
Correct.
on the Cape.
Yeah.
In the Worcester area, there's 5.
Wow. Yeah, it's incredible.
So it's got its own marketing. You have to learn you got to, what do they say? You got to read the room. Well, this is the room. The Cape Cod room is
When in
different
Rome. When in Rome. Yeah.
We've talked about that in past podcasts too. The demographics on the Cape, trends higher, trends a little bit wealthier.
Yeah.
And, those people are still listening to AM, FM radio.
Right.
Also, you go to the beach, take your radio. There's some other factors, but yeah. So you must have seen a lot of changes then. I mean, in 42 years of business,
Oh my gosh.
it's got to be incredible. The landscape has changed so much over these years.
And you talk about we call a sheet cake innovation, and so it's not. It's really not innovation. It's just going back to what used to work is now innovative because you don't see it anymore. But there's so many things that we used to do. What I try to tell people is our job hasn't changed. We have to get the company that we deal with, our clients' names out there to people. The tools have changed.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
yeah.
the only
Sure.
that's what's different. There's still auditory, there's still visual and so forth. The tools have changed. It's not newspaper anymore. It's not even direct mail anymore. It's not 60-second ads off Cape anyways, but it's different, and you have to keep up with those quote unquote innovations. Just the tools have changed, but we still the essence of getting a message to a customer.
Yeah. And some of your customers probably are coming off of their old ways of advertising as well. I mean, you were talking about a story. I think it was about Yellow Pages.
Yes.
It was so fascinating.
When I started, Yellow Pages was one of the biggest line item expenses for a company's marketing.
Yeah.
It was. They used to
unimaginable nowadays.
It could have been, depending upon how many locations you had, you could easily be spending $5,000 a month back then.
Wow.
On the Yellow Pages, the biggest thing that I had to do over the first few years in business was talk people out of it. They weren't buying it because it worked so much as they were fearful. The reps of the Yellow Pages would make them fearful that they were going to lose a position.
Right.
If you don't buy that full page ad, your competitor is going to get that full page ad, and he's going to be seen before you. It's impossible. It's impossible to open up that old Yellow Page book or phone book to an exact page where your ad is. You still had to flip back and forth, and I showed them this. I would show that, and they'd sit there with their mouths open, and then they'd sign the Yellow Pages contract again. Finally, but that money was better spent in those days in radio, television, and so forth. Billboard. We do a lot of outdoor as well. And then the signal that it was over, that the days were over, is when the company, the telephone company, would deliver those books to an office building, and they'd be just shrink wrapped. 100, maybe there's 100 books, 150
I remember
books.
that. See them in the stairwells.
You see them in the stairwells, and they never moved. Nobody ever took them out. They ended up going to be recycled eventually. And that's what finally said to me, that's enough. You got to, and then we got all our clients out of there eventually.
I had a former employee who became a client. He started his own business. This is back in 05, 06, 07. And he was in the roofing business. He was a Vermonter, and he was going to open up a roofing company, which he did. And he told me he was going to rely heavily on Yellow Pages. And I said, don't do that. Don't do that. And I had a completely different marketing program for my roofing company in New Hampshire. And I still subcontracted a lot of small jobs to him because he was a small roofing company. We were a much bigger one. And we remained close. We remained buddies over the years. And at one point, he said, Denny, he says, you were wrong. He said, my phone is ringing off the hook. I said, yeah, that's the problem. And a couple of months later, he goes, damn, that phone won't stop ringing. And they're lowballers. No one's interested in paying
the bottom
the going rate for a roof. These are bottom feeders. These are tire kickers. He said, I got to get that number out of it, but it's stuck there.
Yeah.
He's stuck for another year. And it not only didn't work for him, it was almost a nuisance.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
It's time.
Yeah.
And we, and I mentioned to the point I mentioned before, Chris, about our job hasn't changed. Well, there is a new Yellow Pages. It didn't go away. There's a new Yellow Page. It's called your website.
Yeah.
How many people use your website, go to your website just to get a phone number?
Or a search engine.
Yeah, search
Or
engine.
The Yellow Pages was a search engine before the internet.
Right.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And
exactly. Made out of paper. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So if you look at your website results, if you go into the back end and look at your Google Analytics, you're going to see that the majority of your hits to your website are probably 30 seconds or less.
Yeah.
And that's mainly because people get the phone number and
they're out of here. That's what they want.
That's all they want.
So you're finding you're having the same conversation with people today you were having with the Yellow Page crowd, with the digital sort of, I want to be on Instagram or Facebook instead of, doing a, more traditional ad. Particularly with radio.
Exactly. No, you're 100% right. We have developed and changed over the last 15 years more than I did in the first 30 years of my business, the last 10 years and so forth. It changes, and it changes every single day. The algorithms change with Google and so forth. It's hard to keep up with, but it is a digital world. I understand that. But as I said to you gentlemen before when we were prepping, 92% of all Americans still listen to terrestrial radio.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, big numbers.
You can say whatever you want. You can say,
Yeah.
And the biggest, when we're going to a new client, the biggest problem we have with a new client is telling them, don't buy media that you yourself digest or ingest and so forth because you like it, and don't not buy something because you don't like it. I don't care what you like or you don't like. I got to know what your customer.
Identify your target market.
The target market.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's country radio and you hate country radio and you stay away from it, but yet country radio is what your market is listening to, you buy country radio.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
Yeah. And since this, this market down here in the Cape, it's probably aging. I think it's like 55 is pretty much the age, I think, average age or something like that. Yeah. It's almost there's one number here I was looking at is 85% of those people in the age of 65 and older listen to AM FM radio.
Yeah.
So that's a huge number, 85%. I wish this stunned me. But again, that's why probably the, Bobby Downspout, that whole advertising campaign is so successful down here on the Cape.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And it goes against my thinking of 60-second ads. Bobby Downspout is 60 seconds. Bobby Downspout could be 2-minute ads if it wanted to, because they're enjoyable, they're fun to listen to, and memorable.
Yeah.
We wanted to tell a story each time. It's hard to. We're not advertising our name and our phone number. We're trying to tell a story.
Right.
And it takes 60 seconds to tell the story, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you that we talked about products. Radio, it's TV, it's digital, but service is huge. The reason, so Warren, I think you and I met in about 2019. It was pre-COVID.
Yep.
I had a problem. I was struggling with the iHeartRadio, the 4 iHeart stations down here.
I remember.
And they used to be locally owned. It was Quantum Radio up until about 10 years ago. And those 4 stations were bought out by iHeartMedia. And my rep at the time was Johnny Cool. He's the voice. He's the one that says no monkeys were harmed in the making of this commercial.
I was wondering how he came into the picture.
That's his voice. Okay. He used to work for Quantum.
Johnny Cool.
Then Johnny Cool, we call him that because of the Cool 102 radio station we were on. And Johnny lost a little bit of power when iHeart bought the company, because it went from being locally owned to now owned by a national chain of 958 or some large number of radio stations. And I wasn't getting the slotting times. I wasn't getting my morning drive, my evening drive. They were running my ads sometimes at 8, 10 at night, sometimes at 2 or 3 in the morning. And at this point, Lori and Warren said, let me fix that for you. And so they didn't change the product. The product is still radio. What it was service. And Warren fixed it. He not only fixed it with the iHeart stations, at that point, I said, let me just turn all of my radio advertising over to you and your team. I still make the ads. I still go to the radio stations. I still talk to all the DJs and the recording people, then the studio managers. I still know all those people. What Warren does is a number of things. Number one, first of all, he gives me some insight. You're opening a new Gutter Monkey franchise up on the South Shore or up on Southeast. They'll recommend some radio stations for me. Now, I still research it. I want to make sure that it's our target market. But after that, what Palley Advertising does for me is they help with the placement, make sure I get my morning drive and my evening drive and any other slotting times. They also help me get some bonus slots, which I never knew was available.
Yeah, that's key.
So I would say, I review probably once a month my radio ads at the end of the month. And I think that Lori and Warren are probably responsible for getting me about 20% additional ads from what I was getting, from what I'm paying for.
Yeah. Wow.
And we always sign 1-year contracts. So in my company, we want to let the radio stations know that we're on board for another year. We're not coming in for a month or two to see if it works. And when I have that amount of power that we're bringing, and then I have Palley Advertising working alongside of us, it's just we get so much more bang for the buck.
Wow.
He gets to be the good cop. He gets to go to the station, get the car.
Right,
Be the Bobby Downspout.
Be Bobby Downspout. They love him. They hug him. And then we go beat up the stations for rate. We get a good rate, and then we get the bonuses. But on top of that, too, as you said, today it's not enough to buy a commercial anymore.
Yeah.
You have to have added value.
Yeah.
And that added value might be a news sponsorship or a traffic sponsorship or a weather sponsorship. In this particular case, this weather is being brought to you by the Cape Cod Gutter Monkeys.
Sure. Yeah, you always see
and we don't pay for that.
Yep.
But again, it's just mentions and mentions, because I think the last study I saw said that a potential new customer has to be exposed, has to be hit 3.2 times. Either
I agree
touched
with
on those
that.
numbers a couple of times in the podcast.
You've either got to hear it, see it on digital, drive by it on a billboard,
See it on the trucks. We talk about our panel trucks.
Right.
How many hits do you get a day
Rolling
on panel
billboards.
trucks?
The rolling
thousands
billboards.
and thousands of hits.
Yeah. The other day, we were making some radio commercials up on the South Shore. So I was visiting WATD in Marshfield, and then we headed down and we met up with the folks at WPLM in Plymouth. And when I get back home, it was actually yesterday and earlier today, there's some background music that they didn't have. So I called up the folks over at Codcom down here in Hyannis, and they all communicate. They know each other. And so my friends at Codcom sent the necessary background music up to WATD in Marshfield so that, that would be the type of commercial that we wanted to replicate. And there's a lot of cooperation within the industry. And what Warren does and his team is they make sure that everybody knows what they keep everybody on the same page, at least in my world. And it's really a smooth transition. And there's some truth to what he says is I go make the ads and we have coffee afterwards and we hang out and we talk and it's very fun. And he and his team, I don't know what they do, but they get me free ads. They get me free placement. They get me good placements. They really do take care of the end of business that to me would be very difficult. Yeah.
That's one of the questions I was going to have is like, if I was a small business guy coming to you today, why would I spend, I've got all these ways of, I can hire a Fiverr or something, $10 an hour to write digital ads for me and do all this stuff. Why would I come to a traditional company like you? And you guys have kind of already answered that question here. This is almost paying for your monthly to the advertising company.
Well, Dennis is smart enough to know his time is worth money. And his time is not worth sitting negotiating rates and checking invoices to see what times.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's better off.
Interesting.
It's better off to give it to somebody like us who are gonna. We have a manager in the business office who looks over all the invoices and makes sure that what was ordered ran and it ran at the right time. And if it isn't, then there's going to be either a credit or additional spots coming the next month. A new client that we talk to, it's no different discussion today than it was 43 years ago when we started, Chris. That discussion is okay, what are your needs? What do you feel your needs are?
Mm-hmm.
The biggest mistake that these clients make is they spread their budgets way too thin.
Yeah, I
They
can see
got
that.
X amount, whatever that budget is, whether it's $5,000 a month or $50,000 a month. They want everything. They want digital. They want billboards. They want this and that. And then what happens if they're not using us? They do it on their own. They do it for 2 or 3 months, and all of a sudden it's not getting the results, and they freak and they cut. Oh, radio doesn't work because I tried it for 3 months.
I've heard that so many times.
Yeah,
I tried that last
work.
month.
I tried that last month. It didn't work, and then you find out they were on the wrong station. And you identify who your customer is. You have to identify it. They think, well, it's everybody. No, it isn't. Even Cape Cod gutter monkeys. It's not. Everybody is not your potential customer.
No, absolutely not.
You've got to have a home.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have gutters on that home.
Yeah, right.
So now you're getting narrower and narrower and so forth. And we're able to go in and find out who those people are and where they live.
Mm-hmm.
That's it's really not much different. We deal with multi-generational family companies. That was our niche over the years. Worcester now down to the Cape. Companies like Eagle Leasing.
Yeah,
out
sure.
of Southborough.
Yep, I know those guys. Drive by them all the time.
Yeah, we're dealing with the second generation. Southwick Zoo.
Yeah.
We're dealing with the third generation.
Yeah, wow.
And so
Neshoba Valley Ski Area.
Oh, Neshoba Valley Ski Area. Yeah. Those commercials. Those are good jingles too. They stick in your brain.
The second generation we're dealing with there.
All the furniture companies in Worcester, like Rodman's, you mentioned.
Rodman's,
right? Rodman's, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my first clients many, many years ago.
They had great commercials. They had classic commercials.
They were not using radio when I joined WTAG Radio at the time, coming out of Syracuse. And I came up with a concept at the time to put Barry Rotman. The concept was we will go anywhere to furnish or carpet your home. Yeah. So we had Barry on the moon. We had Barry at Valley Forge. We had him in the desert. We had him everywhere. We had him on the Titanic.
What a great concept! Wow.
And it's radio. It's theater of the mind, right?
Yeah,
just
sure.
like you guys. Just like Bobby Downspout. It's not. It's no different than it was 43 years ago.
That's so cool. What a great idea.
And they loved it. They ate it up, and they became one of the largest radio users at the time. And
this is probably pre-Jordan's Furniture too, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so Jordan's Furniture kind of picked up on this. Seems like all the furniture companies had great commercials. They were all kind of competing each other, but along the same lines of that commercial.
What we try to find, Chris, is you have to identify we call it the USP, your unique selling proposition. Mm-hmm. What is it that you offer, service-wise or product-wise, that your competition doesn't have, or they have it but they don't market it? Yeah. And the biggest example of that that I learned years ago was Folger's Coffee. Do you remember Mrs. Olson?
Sure.
You remember Mrs. Olson, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And the neighbor would say, Mrs. Olson, why is Folger's Coffee so good? And she would say, because it's mountain grown.
Yeah.
Wow. What a concept. All coffee is mountain grown.
Sure. Yeah.
But nobody else jumped on that.
Until Juan Valdez did.
Until Juan Valdez. And Folgers even had that little mountain logo. On the can.
Wow. Mountain grown. Yeah. That was like was it Lucky Strikes?
The cigarettes.
Roasted.
Toasted tobacco.
Toasted tobacco.
Toasted tobacco.
Wow, they got toasted tobacco. That must make it a really great cigarette.
Yeah, they're all toasted. They all had to go through the oven.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
it's crazy. So
Folgers. That's a good one.
So once you can get somebody to identify that, that's step two after you find out who your customer is and so forth, and then being trust people like ourselves enough to say, okay, you guys put something together, come back to me. And anytime we made a presentation to a client, we always had 2 ideas minimum. Mm-hmm. And they say, well, why 2? If you're coming to me with your best idea, why are there 2? Well, because 99% of the time you're going to hear after you make your first presentation is, what else you got?
Yeah.
And I go, oh, okay. Well, we happen to have this one. We have this presentation as well, and so it's a lot of fun though. Yeah. That's the good thing about this is I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah. As you mentioned trust there just a minute ago, and I'm wondering if this Bobby Downspout, one of the reasons why it's so popular in the Cape is because, again, with the more of an elderly crowd or more elderly, radio audience, that maybe that's a big part of it, because Bobby Downspout reminds me of a lot of those furniture commercials. And he is sort of this trustful guy, the guy you can believe in. He's going to show up on time and do your gutters. He's like your next door neighbor, kind of like the quirky next door neighbor sort of guy. So it probably plays a lot into that ad.
If you hear enough of the Bobby Downspout ads, you actually, it's the information that he's giving you,
Sure.
not just you, but your guest on the commercial, whoever that
Sure.
might be. That information makes you trust what they're saying and so forth. And it's coming from quote unquote a reliable source. Nobody has any idea what Bobby Downspout looks like.
Right.
He could be tall, he could be short. Nobody has any, they don't care. They trust what they're hearing.
Yeah, they know him, because they've heard him in the past. They know him. He's like your next door neighbor. He's that guy in the radio ads you used to hear way back when. It's just that sort of
and it's consistency.
Yeah,
that's the other thing.
That's
staying with
thing.
it.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Staying with it. As I said to you before, we have a client that they said runs something for a month or two, and I ran that radio and it didn't work. You didn't stay with it. You have to let it take hold. Those seeds got to grow and so forth, and give it a chance. You have to do it.
Yeah, that's interesting you said that, because if you go through all the Bobby Downspout ones, which I actually have been going through quite a bit of them, they're pretty consistent from today and the original ones. I mean, they haven't really changed that much.
They're informational.
Well,
and
one of my rules, so I always introduce myself as Bobby Downspout here with the South Shore Gutter Monkeys, and then we go forward. And I try to mention, in this case, South Shore Gutter Monkeys 5 times and the phone number once or twice. It's easy to do. It doesn't sound repetitive if you carefully script your ad.
That's crazy. I've never noticed that before.
5 and 2.
I have to go back and look at that.
Because here's what happens. You'll often hear Bobby Downspout say, so call the South Shore Gutter Monkeys at 508-477-9100 or visit us at southshoreguttermonkeys.com. That's 2 mentions right there.
Right, exactly.
And all you have to do is you hit it at the beginning, you hit it twice at the end, and once or twice in the middle. And we do it consistently. And you're delivering your main message. We are all things gutters, gutter cleaning, gutter installs, repairs, and maintenances, and you're also directing them. You're branding the name. It takes a long time, though. It takes, and we're still growing year after year. Our gross sales is growing all the time, which indicates that there's always new people who are looking for our services, and we spend the same dollar amount every month. I don't increase it in the winter. I don't increase it or decrease it in the summer or the fall. I never play games with that. It's the same. It's called branding. We're not advertising. We're not marketing. We're branding.
Yeah.
So that we're living in your brain rent-free all the time is the goal.
When we go through good economic times, advertising is looked at by our clients as an investment. When we hit rough times, and believe me, sure as we're sitting here, I think in the 43 years I've been through 3 or 4 really good recessions. It's the first thing to get cut is advertising. Why? Well, it's a line item. It's an expense. It's no longer an investment. It's become an expense that we can do without, and we can cut it because. And I said, well, are you still in business? Are you still selling XYZ? Well, yeah, we're just not selling as much. So why would you cut it out? Why would you? There's still people out there. The world didn't come to a stop. You have to keep the wheels churning on the train. Maybe the train's going a little bit slower, and maybe it doesn't go as far as it used to. But you don't take the train off the track. You just don't do that, and that's one of the biggest. So every 8 to 10 years, I have to go through this with clients and so forth.
COVID was a big one. Dennis, you've got an interesting story about COVID. How you just came across the radio ads that were so much cheaper during COVID, and you just took.
Well, what happened was it was somewhere around March 15th or March 23rd of 20. I was over at CODCOM. I was meeting with Lori. She's one of my favorite radio people, and we had just cut a few commercials. And Trevor, one of my coworkers, T-Bone, we call him, T-Bone, and I were coming downstairs because he's one of the straight guys. that I have in the commercials. And we're coming downstairs, and Tim, who is the general manager of Codcom, which is 4 radio stations, it has since been purchased. It's still called Codcom, but the LLC, I think, is Coxswain Media. So we were coming downstairs. The governor had just issued a shutdown of the state. And Tim, the general manager, said, "Hey, Dan, you want to sit in on a meeting we're having?" And I said, "Sure." And it was all the important people within that organization, and they were talking about what just happened. And they lost all of their auto dealerships and all of the restaurants. Because April is when the restaurants on Cape Cod really kick it into gear. And I think Tim said he had just lost 72% of his potential advertising.
Wow.
And I remember I said something really stupid at that meeting. I said, no. These are going to be some hard times we got coming up. This is when you double down on your advertising. And then Tim said something like, yeah, I think everybody should know that. So I was back here in the office. We weren't in this building yet. We were still in the old building. And my accountant, my banker, a lot of people were saying there's some PPP loans out there, all kinds of COVID money being given out. And I don't like to take a government money because I know there's a string attached to it on the other end. And maybe 2-3 years from now, there's going to be recall. So I said to my wife, Babs, I said, you give it 30 minutes. If it takes more than 30 minutes to figure out all the compliance and fill out the forms, we're not doing it. Meanwhile, I think we were on about 10 radio stations at the time. And I called each of the station managers and I said something like, I want to pick up a bunch of your vacant spots. You need some revenue. I could probably use some more advertising. So they cut me some really good deals on, and Warren and I were doing business at the time. They threw me a lot of advertising slots at a fraction of the price because they needed to fill that void.
Yeah.
So we signed a 1-year contract, I think, with an extension. So I basically got a much larger footprint for 2 years.
Yeah.
At a time when we didn't know what was coming, but it was easy to fit it in the budget. We got it. And honestly, we boomed during COVID, and the next year were huge years for us. We did not have a down year during COVID.
Yeah.
And that to me just was I think, a good decision. And we never did take the PPP money.
Wow.
And I remember talking to so many of my associates and friends in the business world post-COVID, where they're trying to wrap that whole thing up and do they have to repay it? And if they do, and they were going through that, and we didn't have to spend time or effort on that.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize that the automotive, you talked about the automotive marketing that got cut.
Yeah.
It still hasn't rebounded totally yet. And I don't know if it ever will with the automotive, but people don't realize with radio and TV companies that automotive is anywhere from 25 to 30% of their revenue.
Wow.
Yeah.
Still. Wow. Yeah.
And it's year round.
It's year round, and a lot of it hasn't come back. I think maybe 10% has come back.
Wow.
I know the folks over at Marty's trucks up in Kingston, Plymouth, Kingston. I think exit 9 up there. And then we also buy all of our service trucks over at Falmouth Toyota. It's actually in Bourne now. But I know those guys real well. And yeah, the auto industry, especially the trucks industry, it's not the same anymore. It takes longer to get them.
Yeah.
And I talk to these folks and I see what they're going through. COVID really changed their industry. It didn't change mine. We're in the home service industry. It was a bump in the road, a hurdle and a wrench, and we got through it, and everything seems to be back, on a normal level, except aluminum. Pre-COVID was always 88 to 92 cents a pound. Now I'm paying $3.80 a pound. Think about 90 cents, and it was level at 90 cents for a long time, like 4, 5, 6 years in a row.
Yeah.
And now it's at $3.80, $3.75, $3.80 a pound.
Wow.
So when there's talk about tariffs and possible increase in aluminum, it could happen, but we had to go up a little bit in our prices, not a lot, but we did, and we moved forward.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like a good idea to have someone like an advertising group like you
Oh my
in your
gosh.
back pocket in times like that. It's almost like having a CFP. We were talking about CFPs last week, right?
Mm.
When the market takes a crash, you need someone like a CFP or your financial advisor you can go to, and he'll say, we've been through this before. Don't worry about it. This is how we handle it. There's a lot of opportunity here. Sort of the same thing with advertising companies. If I got you, I can run to you and say, listen, market's going to crap. I'm cutting all my advertising. You've been in business 42 years to say, hey, wait a minute. Seen this before. Here's your opportunities. You can take advantage of those.
Absolutely. Because look, there's less clutter if you think about it. A radio station, digital, billboards, TV, there's less of your, less gutter cleaning companies advertising. There's less car dealers advertising. So the ones that do advertise stick out.
Yeah,
Sure.
You're not competing against, 5 minutes later, another commercial from another competitor or so forth. So you really do stick out during that time period. And it's a podcast. I can say it takes balls to be able to stick with it and spend that and sign that check every month for the advertising during tough times.
Yeah,
it really does. But Dennis stuck by it and stayed with it, and it paid dividends.
Yeah, it's the same thing, sticking in the market, not ripping all your money out of the market when the market crashes,
Exactly.
because you're with someone that knows, seen it before, they've been through it, they can tell you all the war stories, and you can kind of get through it.
Yeah.
You'll often hear me talk about your inner circle, and everybody who's in business, for example, needs an accountant, you need a banker, you need a financial planner, you need an attorney, you need a marketing consultant. Yeah. These are people that should be in your loop before you need them. Right. So that when you need them, they know your platform. Yeah. They have your history. And remember too, Chris, Warren, any one of us, you are the average of the 5 people that you are closest to in any world, in your business world or in your personal world. I try to surround myself with people that are smarter than me and people that have skill sets that I don't have. And when you do that, it makes we all rise the tide together. That's why you want to have people like Warren and his whole team.
Yeah.
And we're going through some interesting stuff right now. It's so great to have these people here because they know my history.
Yeah, sure.
We don't have to explain the backstory. It's just a quick phone call and boom, we're moving forward.
Yeah. That's interesting. How do you guys see sort of your relationship going forward? I know things are changing still. I mean, the baby boomers are aging out and things like that. Do you see this is going to be sort of probably a gradual change, but do you anticipate any sort of changes coming up near term or?
Well, we've been working on, this as well. We got to get Bobby Downspout further out there,
right?
And in a different area. And you can't buy any more radio than you're buying. I mean, on Cape Cod, off Cape Cod. For the franchisees is another story. But I know we've been working on some animation and so forth to get Bobby Downspout out there in front of people, whether it's through cable, buying Red Sox, Bruins, Celtics games on Nesson and that type of thing, or digitally sending out, even on the website, having Bobby Downspout come out and say hello to you once you click into the website on the homepage.
Yeah, I love that
idea. So giving a quick 15-second, hi, I'm Bobby Downspout. You've heard of me. Now you get to, aren't I a good-looking guy?
Yeah, I love that idea.
That type of thing. So I see, there's more there that we've got planned and so forth. As far as the tools, that obviously digital is invaluable. We've got to be there. There's going to be younger homeowners starting to use your services, and they're going to be as they get older and buy homes and so forth. They've already been through the digital training. They understand it more than the 60-year-old of 5 years ago versus the 60-year-old 5 years from now are going to be two different people.
A little bit different.
That's going to be tricky too, because I know in the digital market, just since I've been working on it, and that's not my background. I came from a high tech background. This is kind of my second career or third. It's probably my 5th career. But, digital marketing,
ever evolving,
digital marketing, podcasting and stuff. But even inside that market, just in the time I've been doing, it's changed so much. How much more it's gone? It's gone from Facebook to Instagram. We're into TikTok now, and YouTube's taking off. Now YouTube is becoming the dominant marketing platform.
Right.
Podcasts, videos, everything. It's become, YouTube. So it's going to be changing quite a bit. It's going to be tricky. It's not
good
going to be as
for-
straightforward, I think, as TV versus radio or something
Right.
like that. Inside digital marketing, there's going to be who knows what it'll be.
It's and it's not the answer for everybody.
No,
it's not
it's
the
not.
cure-all. It's not the
No.
silver bullet that everybody thinks it is. Because one of the biggest problems we have is trying to back people off when they call and go, "I got to get into digital. I got to do that. I got to be on YouTube. I got to wait. Time out now." All right, you have a one location company.
Yeah.
Your customers come from maybe 20
Sure.
miles around.
Right.
Let's not get crazy here.
That's so true.
Home Depot, they got to be.
Yeah.
They got to be on YouTube because everybody's their
Yeah,
customer
yeah,
and so
yeah.
forth. But if you're a small clothing store, for example, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
fine men's clothing store, and you want to, I got to be on social media. I have to be on Instagram. I got to be. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't have
Yeah.
to.
Such a distraction too, and it's a lot of work. Trust me, it's just a lot of work. So
Exactly, but it's like it's a herd mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's following the sheep and so forth. Everybody's there, and you know what? We always say to our clients that digital hole is a black hole.
Yeah.
That
Oh, I know.
You can just keep tossing money into that, and somebody will come back and say to you, "Well, look at all the hits you hit. You had this many hits," and say, well, "Yeah, but my business didn't increase.
Yeah, it didn't make the phone
It
ring.
didn't make the
Yeah.
phone ring. It didn't make
Right.
the meter move." So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard market to figure out whether you're actually hitting your target markets there. And it's getting even harder now with cookies and everything going away. I mean, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, it's even getting more difficult.
And Google just loves to get on the phone and call people and try to sell them into all
they're
types of
brutal,
things.
Brutal, yeah. Now they got bots, that'll answer
Yeah.
your ads just to make you feel good. It's insane. But
Exactly.
yeah. So we did touch on it a little bit. Cape Cod Gutter Monkeys is a franchise of AGM. Bobby Downspout has been representing Cape Cod Gutter Monkeys for many years, but we kind of want to get Bobby Downspout out sort of into our franchises and things like that. So that's kind of a transition we're going to have to sort of work with you on, I guess, to be able to figure out.
I see Bobby Downspout is the next Bob from Bob's Furniture.
Yeah.
These guys, Warren's team was here probably 3 weeks ago. We had a meeting, and we've begun acting on that meeting. We've taken two of our current radio stations that we're on, Cat Country and WPLM. They're the two largest geographically. Also, the towers and the power that they put out, 50,000 watts per. And so we just started building our new platform the other day, Monday. I was up there to those stations making some new radio ads that are regional ads.
Okay.
And so this is one of the new strategies. And this was from a meeting. Were you at that meeting, Chris, a month or so, 3-4 weeks ago?
No, I think I missed that one.
Warren was here. Laurie was here. Andy, Bruce, myself, a couple of us were here. And we were bouncing things around. And so we've started moving in that direction this week, because next week is March 3rd. This is when we launch our new strategy for the year.
Mm-hmm.
And you always have to be thinking that way if you're a growing company.
Right.
And that's why it's good to have opinions from people who I don't work with every day.
Yeah.
It's important that we find a way to keep Bobby Downspout and the Gutter Monkey family likable and local.
Mm-hmm.
People like to do business with local companies.
Yep.
So as we branch out off Cape to the other franchisees geographically, I mean, we're going up, looking to the north up to New Hampshire, Maine. We're looking south, different coastal regions and so forth. That has to translate. Bobby Downspout's commercial and message has to translate into, we're a local company. Call us. We'll be there. You're going to talk to a human being when you call. And we're gonna book. We'll send somebody out and give you a free estimate. So the marketing we have to be able to take it from the Cape where it grew, and transfer it to these other regions. And we have to make sure that we're buying the right radio stations. the right radio station in New Hampshire might be different than the right radio station on Cape Cod.
Yeah.
And so we have to do a lot of research and talk to the stations. It's very important.
I always find it interesting. You guys are always talking about, radio strength and demographics and things like that, and these sort of radio, where's the radio tower located and things like that.
Well, that's interesting. It's important. It's important. All of that is important. And Dennis has spent a lot of time looking at that as well. We look at formats. Today, as I said to you, 92% of Americans are listening to terrestrial radio. Everybody says, well, satellite radio. It's wonderful. 500 stations, whatever. But what happens is you get satellite radio free for the first year when you buy a new car. The majority of the people do not renew their
I'm going through that right now.
Yeah.
I'm going through that right now.
The majority of the people do not renew their subscription to satellite radio the second year.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful thing. But if you go into the car, most people again will have minimum somewhere around 3 to 4 stations, as opposed to years ago when we used to have all these presets and we'd have a dozen or so stations.
Mm-hmm.
Today everybody has a one music station. They've got a sports talk station and so forth. If they're males and so forth, and they might have a news talk. Yeah. But that's pretty much that's it, because people still want local information. They want to hear somebody talking about the local restaurant. They want to hear local weather, traffic, and so forth. They're just not listening to as many stations. So our job becomes a little more difficult. We have to narrow that down and find those stations in those markets that are going to serve.
Yeah, we've been talking recently with you about franchise down south, and so their radio footprint isn't quite the same as Cape. Maybe things aren't working out as well for them, so you're down there kind of tinkering and figuring out how this particular franchise is going to take advantage of Bobby Downspout radio. And
geography has a lot to do with it and so forth. If you put a franchise in a triangle of 3 different corners of 3 states, and that you can't afford to buy all 3 states. It's not easy. So we have to really count on information and feedback from the franchisee as to, you got to tell me, 5, 10 miles. I can't go 20, 30 miles out.
Yeah.
Can't afford to do that. And you got to buy the right stations. Yeah. It's very important.
Creating the culture, to create a brand, it's a culture. Burger King is out marketing on TV anyway, McDonald's. Mm-hmm. I don't think McDonald's needs to brand in that way as heavily as Burger King, because last time I checked, McDonald's still was number 1 in the fast food industry as far as annual sales, but you see Burger King trying to create this new culture now with their radio and their TV advertising. They have that, they're singing these funky tunes that don't sound that attractive, but it sticks in your brain. One of my lifelong philosophies on advertising, and especially for the upstart business, for the rookie, is advertising is expensive only if it doesn't make the phone ring.
Right.
Wow.
I don't care anymore how much we spend. I know I'm not going to overspend, but if there's a new radio station, or if as we move, and expand our region, if there's a radio station that hits my demographic and Warren says we need to put $2,800 a month, we're doing it, because I know it's going to outproduce not advertising.
Yeah.
$2,801 of business means I'm on the positive side.
Right.
So once we figure out what works and we've replicated it 2, 3, 4, 5 times, we can go to a new location and say, okay, we know what our target demographic is: age, region, location, income levels, so on and so forth. All right, and this is what they listen to. And boom, that's where we go.
Yeah.
Advertising is expensive only if it doesn't make the phone ring.
All right.
And if that's something that I can have the upstart business owner just wrap his mind around that, it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge.
Okay.
I remember many years ago, before Neshoba Valley ski area, we handled Wachusett Mountain and the Crowley family. And I remember David Crowley, God bless his soul, just passed away this past year. And I remember David saying, and they were spending, God, that time, they had to be spending $400,000 a year between TV and
Oh,
radio.
easy, yeah.
And so, but remember, they were getting a lot of bonus on
Sure.
top of that.
Oh, yeah.
that, you know,
Yeah, they're so well branded.
so well branded. But anyways, I remember him sitting in the meeting and saying to us, I really could theoretically stop my advertising. We're so well known.
Sure.
I could stop for a whole ski season.
Yeah, try to save a few bucks
and save some money and so forth and so forth. He says, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid to do it. I'm afraid what the alternative could be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I don't do it.
Yeah.
So it's and
You work it into to your platform.
Yeah.
My monthly marketing budget, once we set it, it's a 1 year long agreement, and then we reestablish it a year later, maybe add some slotting time, but it's part of the budget every month, just like payroll.
Yeah.
Or replenishing my stock. So I don't not order product from my warehouse because we have plenty of it. Oh, let's not order it this month. We'll save money. No, it's part of the budget.
Mm-hmm.
You keep your inventory updated. You
good
keep your
analogy.
payroll. You keep your payroll up to date,
Mm-hmm.
and you keep your marketing budget on budget.
correct.
Those are normal monthly expenses, and in the end, we know what to expect. I agree, Warren. I could cancel all my radio advertising, and we'd still probably have a really great year this year. But then I got that recovery. You don't want to do that.
Oh, you'd have my mom saying, I haven't heard
Don't say
the
that.
Gutter Monkeys ad.
Oh, no, you can't do that.
It's the big one, Elizabeth. I'm coming. It's the big one.
No, and I think your friends from Wachusett are right.
Yeah.
If you're branding, if you're digital marketing, and there's other things. I mean, digital pop-up ads, they're not sort of the branding type of thing that I use radio for.
Mm-hmm.
Direct marketing or direct mail. Direct mail, you send it out, you get a response, and there's not a whole lot of brand awareness being built there.
Right.
It's direct response. I'm sending you this, and this is for Labor Day weekend, and it's never going to happen again. So
Right.
come down and buy your car this week. And proper branding, yeah, it could allow you to stop advertising, and at the pace you're going, you might run for another year or two, but you don't want to do that.
Right. You also talk about how it kind of keeps the foot on the neck of your competitors as well, right?
Absolutely.
So, every time they continually hear your radio ads over and over and over again, it just, it is kind of, you got your foot on their neck. Why take it off?
Exactly. I think one of the greatest examples he's just of consistency of branding was even in the car business was Herb Chambers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He just sold.
Everybody
He just
knows
sold
that.
for $1.2 billion. He just sold
No
his
kidding.
40 dealerships. Yeah, last week for $1.2 billion. Yeah, but they don't advertise over the years. If you look at his billboards and so they would never advertise price an item. It was always something. It was always some message and so forth. We don't help. We don't sell cars. We help people buy them. Yeah, those kind of messages and so forth.
Ernie Bach was great at this too as well. Even his son was really good.
Oh,
his son is very innovative as well. In fact, he has his own sort of Bobby Downspout. I don't know if you've ever seen the animated Ernie Bach Jr.
Oh yeah.
Really
and he's a
amazing
musician,
stuff.
and
musician,
he's a cultural
Yeah.
type of icon. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And now his kids, and I believe his grandkids, but his kids are, they're working them into the storylines.
Yeah.
I saw one very recently. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're kind of wrapping it up here.
Yeah, it's been
I
a
guess
long,
it's a good way to go.
Here,
It's very interesting. We could go on for quite a
yeah,
while.
absolutely.
We'll have you back again.
Oh, I would
mean,
love to.
much-
This was great.
I want to.
I really enjoyed it.
I'm excited actually about getting into the whole, animated Bobby Downspout journey. So we'll keep you informed about that and try to stay up on the
next
happenings
chapter.
there.
The next chapter. That's
Warren, thanks for joining
My
us.
pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us today
My
on Monkey
pleasure.
Business Radio. And as always, we'll go out with.
No monkeys were harmed in the making of this podcast.
There you go. All right. Thank you very much. See you next time.